A big part of success depends on our ability to understand and manage our emotions. They can energize and keep us focused on what we want. They can drag us down into feelings of hopelessness. They can distract us to things that don't matter or might go wrong. Emotions can also drive us to say or do things that are harmful, getting us into even deeper trouble. In Learning Power, we teach students how to observe, name, and understand their emotions by using a simple color code for the primary attitudes we all have. Green represents feelings of happiness and confidence. Blue represents sadness and disappointment. Yellow stands for feeling afraid and anxious. Finally, red represents anger and frustration. Even though we commonly regard 3 of these primary attitudes as negative, it's important to help students understand that each attitude is part of a healthy emotional life. These days it seems that fewer and fewer people are willing to take responsibility for what's going on in the world. We want to push the blame onto someone or something else, partly perhaps to release ourselves of having to do anything about the way things are going. But passing blame only postpones the creative solutions we all want, pointing fingers when we could be doing our part to make it better. In this Learning Power competency, we want to help students appreciate the creative possibilities that emerge when they take responsibility in their lives. Each of us has more creative influence in the quality and direction of our lives than we typically realize. Personal responsibility is about waking up to our creative power and using it in ways that foster health, meaning, joy, community, and peace in the world for ourselves and those around us. But when so much is outside our control, where can we possibly begin? The prevalence of attention deficit disorder in society today is evidence of the fact that more and more people are feeling out of control when it comes to their ability to pay attention. With so many things to distract us, and with the ubiquitous flash technology rushing our focus across a barrage of streaming pixels, our brain's talent for keeping up with all these stimuli is being exercised at the expense of its other talent for concentrating and holding focus for prolonged periods of time. A foundational objective in Learning Power is to strengthen the ability in students to manage their attention. While it is common to believe that the focus of attention is determined by the intensity or allure of the stimuli outside us, paying attention is actually a skill that can be strengthened and developed. The fact is, we don't have to give our attention to one thing or another. We are constantly making choices about where to put our focus. We want to help students learn how to manage and direct their attention to things that support health, happiness, community, and success in life. Another key idea in Learning Power is that feeling follows focus, which has to do with the way the brain matches our emotional state or attitude to the object of attention, whether it's something we perceive in the world around us, something we recall from the past, or something we are conjuring up by imagination. By now, your students should be familiar with the way their brains generate an attitude of happiness when they focus on what they love, an attitude of disappointment when they focus on failure or loss, an attitude of anxiety when they focus on a threat, or an attitude of frustration when they focus on obstacles in their way. These are all natural responses in their bodies to what their brains are focusing on. So, if we are responsible for where we pay attention, then it must be that we are also responsible for the attitudes that filter our view of the world. The 4 primary attitudes that we work with in Learning Power are more than just feelings. As the word suggests, an emotion is the energy that moves us to act or behave in specific ways. Each primary attitude possesses this motivational element, moving behavior in accordance with its dominant mood. When we're happy, we move toward or deeper into what we want. When we're sad, we let go and withdraw. When we're afraid, we avoid or run away. And when we're angry, we are motivated to fight and attack. So, if we are responsible for where we pay attention and for the attitudes that naturally motivate us to act in specific ways, then it must be that we are also responsible for how we behave in the world. And of course, nothing happens in a vacuum. Every action is a cause to further effects, which are known as consequences. drop a stone into a pond and the effects of that disturbance will ripple outward from that point. Toppling just one domino in a standing line of dominoes will set off a chain reaction of kinetic force that brings them all down. Translating these analogies into human behavior reminds us that our actions have effects farther out and later on, beyond what we can fully predict. These consequences are the continuing, rippling, toppling, amplifying force of our actions. But certainly we can't be responsible for the consequences of our behavior, right? Well, let's review our path to this point. If we are responsible for where we pay attention and for the attitudes that naturally follow our focus and motivate our behavior, then we are also responsible for the consequences that flow from our actions. Now we're going to carry this out one more step to a conclusion that very few people these days are willing to accept. Our circumstances in life include the present arrangement of things, the conditions we live in day to day, the distinctive set of challenges and opportunities that make up our daily reality. Who would dare accept responsibility for that? But let's look closer. In actuality, much of our circumstances are really the crystallized consequence of earlier habits, choices, and behaviors. As we keep doing the same things in the same ways as before, the ripples of our actions solidify, becoming boundaries and walls around our freedom. They can seem so real that we are ready to regard them as the way things are. So, if a big part of our circumstances is actually the fallout and enduring consequences of our behavior, and if our behavior is motivated by attitudes that are generated according to where we direct our attention, then we are indeed responsible for our circumstances. If we really want to, we can change them, and we begin by making changes in where we put our focus. Instead of beating against the wall in frustration and complaining how unfair it is, we can redirect our attention to what we really want and start creating a new reality. As you can see, this learning power competency of personal responsibility contains some extremely valuable life lessons for students to learn and live. These are summarized in what we will call the 5 rings of responsibility. Just like ripples moving across a pond, every human being is a center of creativity, whose influence begins with the focus of attention, generating attitudes that in turn motivate behavior, producing consequences that give shape to the surrounding circumstances. Your role is to help students understand the 5 rings of responsibility, to model and teach the skills that will empower them to take creative control in their lives. As always, a valuable activity uses stories to explore the 5 rings. Upon completing a story together, ask questions of the students to help them identify where in the narrative one or more rings are evident. Trace them back to what a character is thinking or focusing on, and follow them outward to see how a character's behavior determines the outcome. In just about every interaction with your small groups or individual students, conversation and activities might easily include exploration of the 5 rings of responsibility.